confirmation from State Representative Amin Brown as well, who should be here, I'm assuming any minute now. If he's coming, prayerfully he is. Hopefully he's just running late. He's coming back from New York, but I'm grateful that you all would come and be here with us this evening to be with the Black Pastors United for Education. And I'm going to ask that the pastors that are a part of the Black Pastors United for Education, would you stand now? We have two here. I think Bishop Cease is on his way, and Reverend Dawkins as well. Can we give God thanks and praise for these pastors who are here? And there's other clergy that is here as well. Would the clergymen who are here and clergy women that are here, would you please stand? We'd like to acknowledge you as well. Thank you for being here. Amen. Amen. Thank you. And then the mayor of Stilton is here, Mayor Sierra Dent. Would you stand? We'd just like to acknowledge you. Thank you for being here. And we are so grateful that everyone is here this evening for what I believe is a very important conversation. And tonight, the intention of tonight is very clear. Our endeavor is to educate our congregations and community so that we are rightly informed as to what we need to know about the policies and laws that impact education in Pennsylvania. I think one of the reasons why sometimes we can't participate in our community as much as we would like to, or participate as far as education and come up with solutions to the situations and problems that we see, is because we're not informed as a people as to how our state is governed as it relates to education. And so I wanted to bring these lawmakers here for education. This is not public accountability. This is public discourse to learn about these laws that impact all of us. How many of you all in here have children now, or connected to children now, and children are your concern now, right? Just raise your hand if that's you.
Am I allowed to say it after 30?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so all of us have an immediate reason to be concerned. And concern is not, I'm not using it in a negative way, but to be paying attention to the laws that govern education in Pennsylvania. And so tonight we will ask our lawmakers to inform us. I want to make this a regular thing where we are in public discourse about these laws and policies that govern education, because we want to be a part of the voting body that helps to perpetuate the ideals that we agree to. And so we want to be informed so we can be informed voters. And so we're going to take time this evening to ask questions from them, to just get, if you could take off your party affiliation hat as much as you are able, and just educate people, and just assume that I don't think anyone is dumb here or anyone lacks knowledge or whatever that may be, but just assume we don't know anything about, anything as it relates to the laws that govern education in Pennsylvania, and try to speak very candidly, but, very fairly as to these issues. So I want to ask a number of questions tonight for you to answer to this audience. Number one, go ahead.
Do we have like a minute response, or 2 minute, or?
Yeah, I would think in small increments. So maybe 90 seconds for a response, something like that.
Short.
Yeah, and then, I'll follow up with questions, or, kind of let you know. Okay? That makes sense. So I want to first ask, could you explain to us what a state representative is and what a senator is, and what your role is in government and politics? What does that even look like? So your position, and then related to exactly how does that play out as far as education is concerned? Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. State Representative Dave Mattson. I have the privilege of representing the 104th Legislative District. We're currently in the 104th, so I appreciate all you coming out. And I just want to give a round of applause to the audience here. You are attending a very critical issue despite a football game. So I'm always really impressed when people choose civics over football. So, what a state representative does is we pass laws. We draft legislation or we vote on legislation in the House, and then we represent your concerns and lift those up when we have discussions with other lawmakers across the state. We also run a district office, so I actually have flyers. So I'll be, have them up there if anybody needs it. And I think I brought these because it does go over all the things that a district office can do for you, and it's pretty extensive. I didn't even know all the things that a district office could do until I got into this role. So it's a very useful handout to just sort of see what we can do and we can help you with. But largely, we're your gatekeeper to state government. So we're that bridge. So if you're having an issue with PennDOT, the Department of Revenue, whatever it may be, you can come to our office and then we will advocate on your behalf and try to find a resolution for you. So trying to stick to the timeline, I would say in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Okay, thank you.
Great, I'm John DeSanto. I represent the 15th Senatorial District, which is Dauphin County. And there are 6 House of Representative members within my Senate district. So as Dave said, this is his district as well as mine. The difference between the House and the Senate really is that the House only has 50 members and the Senate has 50 members. The House has 202. And the purpose of the House is to be much closer to the people, that they are easier to contact, and so not that I'm hard to contact, but the Senate is supposed to be a more deliberative body and look at issues on a statewide basis, where the House members look at issues more local, although they pertain to statewide as well. Just very briefly, I'm 63 years old. In my 2nd term as a senator, and I got elected because I don't like government. I don't like how government's working. I don't like how government's growing. And in fact, I'm a Republican. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but it's important.
Absolutely.
It's important to note that the Republican Party didn't want me elected because I'm an older person, I'm independent, I have my own thoughts, and they ran a candidate against me who I prevailed against and ended up getting elected. So my mission as a senator is to try to eliminate property taxes and get educational vouchers in place for Pennsylvania. That's what I've been working on for 7 years, and I have not been successful with either one of those. And it's really irritating because as a man of faith as well, and in politics, you just have to keep upbeat. You have to keep the fight. You have to keep going. My wife and our philanthropic efforts are dedicated to the youth of Pennsylvania. Although it is laudable to try to help older people that are in trouble and bring them back, and that's good, we found, my wife and I believe, that if we can save youth and get them on the right track early in life, it's a lot easier than trying to fix broken life. So, I don't mind being here. I'm fighting the fight, and I'm here to try to encourage everybody here to vote for the people that are working on education reform and promise to do something about it.
Thank you. Thank you. As you can see, we have 2 on the flyer. We had 6. So I'm going to tell you, as far as I know, where the others are. State Representative Amin Brown, I haven't talked to him since Wednesday. He asked me to call him on Friday. I've called him on Friday, no answer. I've called him today, no answer. I don't know why State Representative Amin Brown is not here. State Representative Carol Evans, what's her last name? Carol Hill Evans, I'm sorry, I was messing that up. Responded, we sent her an invitation. She left me a voicemail explaining that she couldn't be here, but that she would be willing to be here in the future. State Representative Patty Kim, I haven't heard a response back from her. There's 3 open emails, invitations. She scheduled a meeting with us for November 20th. No call, no show. And I'm not jumping into her motives. I'm just being transparent with you all. She's not here, and I don't know why she's not here when she agreed to be here to have this event. And so I don't want to, again, I'm not peering into her motives, but I am saying I don't think it's right. I think that at minimum, you can answer an email or something and communicate that you can't be here. And so, to me, I will be transparent with how I feel about it. The days of no response, over. We need to have open dialogue. And again, I've told both of these gentlemen, I've told all of the people that we've invited, this is not a panel for accountability. This is a panel for information. So there should be no reason why our lawmakers would not be here to inform the people who put them in office via our vote. Okay? So I want to give a few facts about education in Pennsylvania, and then I want to begin to start asking you all some questions in light of them. Are you all ready, media folks? Y'all, we good to go? Okay. Pennsylvania school district spending per student increased to $21,263 in 21-22. State support of public education is up 55.7% over the last decade, reaching an all-time high of nearly $14.8 billion in 2022-2023. Pennsylvania exceeds national averages for local, state, and federal per pupil spending on public schools and ranks 8th in the nation for total per student public school funding. Pennsylvania school districts have over $5.96 billion in general reserve funds, and another $3 billion, which includes charter schools and other public schools, in unspent federal COVID-19 aid still sitting in the Treasury. In Pennsylvania, 33 high schools in Pennsylvania have 0 students at grade level in math. 6 high schools in Pennsylvania have 0 students at grade level in reading. PSSA scores for the Harrisburg City School District are far below the state average. Only 13% of Black children in the district are proficient in ELA, English Language Arts, and the numbers are even worse for math. Only 2.8 of Black children are proficient in math in the Harrisburg School District. Schools in the Harrisburg School District are unsafe. 154 reported fights, 31 assaults on staff, and 94 assaults on student were reported in 2021-2022 school year. These are just some facts that I'm putting out there so that you understand the lay of the land, what we are facing. Let me rush to say this, and I said it this morning to the congregation, I'll say it to you all. It's not all doom and gloom. I'm giving you the areas that we need to improve. I'm hoping that we do celebrate the areas that we're doing well. The Harrisburg School District does well in certain things. We're trying to come up with solutions for the areas that are not going so well. Is that understood? That sound good? Is that okay? Are we allowed to do that? Can we celebrate what they're doing, what people are doing well? Right? Can we? And then can we constructively find ways to build up and to help in the areas that we're not doing so well? And that's why our lawmakers are here, because we want to be a part of solutions, not just, and as Christians, can I say this? We ought not be cynics and commentators and critics. We ought to be Christians, right? Who joined the problem. That sounds like somebody we preach about and celebrate, right? He who knew no sin. Okay, I ain't gonna preach on this stage, right? So, question number 1. The Harrisburg School District went from getting $18,000 per student in 2012 to more than $22,000 in 2022. That's several thousand more than the national average. What do you support to ensure better education quality and more educational opportunities for our kids? Either one of you.
I'll take it. And I didn't get to mention all the parts I represent, by the way. I represent Steelton, Swadera Township, South Harrisburg here, in and around Hall Manor, High Spire, Paxton, and then in and around Middletown, around the airport, Penn State Harrisburg. So to answer your question, when we look at what encompasses to educate a child completely, those are some big numbers you're throwing out there. But I don't think it actually really encompasses everything that we need to do. Particularly, we have to feed kids. A lot of times in Harrisburg, a lot of our kids are coming in, they haven't ate anything. Some have not even slept. So what we have to do as well is make sure that we have funding and resources around human services programs as well. And a large part we do this through the counties. I think we can foster better partnerships between the county and schools to make sure that human resources are allocated to families that need help. If we know that a kid's not eating or sleeping, we should have a social worker on call that can go to that house and provide services to those folks. But beyond that, I think really where the accountability starts is with the school board. We need, if you're not aware, you do vote for people that represent you at the school board. And they run every other year, but they have 4-year terms. Really find out who those folks are. If you can, attend school board meetings. They usually happen during the week and the evening. Particularly around this time of the year is always good to go because they're talking about their budgets, the very conversation we're having. And they have line items for each particular thing. What's going to food, what's going to after school programs, what's going to sports facilities. Go there, ask questions, and make sure that you let your school board members know how you feel about those, if it's not enough or it's too much. Because I know as a representative, I want to hear your feedback. I want to get asked questions. And if I don't know where the community's at, I don't really like that because I feel like I'm not making a vote that's representative of what people want. But I would say to answer your question, it's the school board, but I also think county, building and fostering relationships with the county and human services so that we can adequately address what the entire family needs.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's so many challenges facing education right now. I think one of the biggest threats to our country is technology. Undoubtedly, technology has helped businesses, medical field, that type of stuff, dramatically increase efficiency, deliver care better, even learning better in some instances. But the bad side of technology, from my perspective, is Facebook, Twitter. I don't know what Snapchat or TikTok is, but I hear that thrown around a lot. I do not have a personal Facebook or Twitter or any of that stuff. But I also think that the schools, when I was younger, I went to public school, did not have to face the challenges that schools are facing right now. And one of the biggest challenges beside technology is the Department of Education, in my mind. There is so much state control coming down to the local schools, telling them how to do stuff. You have to do this, you have to do that, on and on and on. And the schools really are not in control of their own destiny in some ways from a financial perspective because 60% of their budget is driven by state mandates. And a not great portion of the budgets are driven by teacher salaries, which makes sense, but also retirement. And those are costs that they can't really contain. So put that all together. How do you fight technology? How do you work with kids that are coming to school hungry? How do you work with kids that have mental issues? And I believe the way to do that is to get control of our local schools away from the state and put it in the hands of people that are committed to building our communities and giving them the financial resources to determine how that money should be spent. I represent pretty much all of Dauphin County, and the needs of the Harrisburg School District are completely different than Lower Dauphin School District, or completely different than Upper Middle Paxton Township. And it's impossible for the state to address all these concerns with one swoop. And part of the problem, which I said earlier, why I'm angry with government and fighting government, trying to make it smaller, is we need to get this power back into our hands. I mean, we're the greatest country in the world. I'm with you, Pastor. I try to be positive about everything. We've done a lot of things. We've educated a lot of people. We've fed a lot of people. We can tackle this problem in the way we used to do it by letting people do it. And getting churches involved, too. I told Pastor earlier, I'm a man of faith. I'm a practicing Christian. And our community is under assault right now. It's like we're bad people because we're out there trying to be good people. That's somehow now bad. And you look at that in all of society that people are going, America's bad, it's flawed. You know, hey, have we made mistakes? Can we do better? Absolutely. But this is the only country in the world that people are breaking the doors down to come to. And I'm preaching now. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate that. It sounds like we have of course, a crisis as far as the care of our children. Sometimes they come from homes that they're not fed adequately, they don't sleep properly, and then they go to schools that are so regulated by the government. Sounds like that teachers, administrators, they can't properly address the needs because they have so many regulations that prevent that from
I don't know
happening.
any teacher that have left the profession because they don't like teaching. And I talk to a lot of teachers. Teachers are leaving the profession because they're sick of all the ancillary nonsense that they're not teaching. They're not permitted to teach.
Isn't that interesting? Okay. Here's my second question. Would you please explain to us what is a Lifeline Scholarship, or the PASS program? Who does it benefit? Who could potentially be injured by the implementation of those programs?
Well, I got to answer that. I got it.
Okay.
That's my question. Okay. All right. I'm just kidding Dave up here. So the Lifeline scholarships and PASS are the same thing. And what the Senate had done in conjunction with certain members of the House, we were able to put together a plan that would provide $100 million of new money to a program that would provide school vouchers for people in the lowest 15% performing schools. That's the lowest 15% performing schools.
1 second, I'm sorry. Can you tell us what you mean by school voucher?
Well, that should be a simple answer, but it's a term that's commonly thrown around. And what would happen is, in fact, that the state would create an account of money up to $5,000 for grade school kids, $10,000 for high school kids, and $15,000 for special needs kids. People would apply for that scholarship, and then they would be given a voucher, a paper, a check to pay for the schooling of their kids, however they saw fit. So when I say voucher, it's essentially a state payment plan to educate your kid in a non-public school. So, we had that plan all ready to go, and the Senate passed the budget. With that, it went over to the House, and then, you cannot, as much as you want to, Pastor, divorce this discussion from politics. You really can't, because when it went over to the House, the Democrats would not pass that budget the way it was until Governor Shapiro agreed to line item veto that $100 million. And that was infuriating to me because, we acted on Governor Shapiro's words, and he had also said during his campaign that he supported school vouchers. And what's so frustrating to me is I have 7 school districts in my Senate district. 3 of them have 15% or less failing schools in them. The kids in Harrisburg, in Susquehanna, in Steelton could have gotten a good education. And this was additional money. It had no impact on the amount of money that was going to the public schools. So that's as briefly as I can tell you. There's a lot more there. I don't know if Dave wants to add anything, and we can go further down the road.
He covered what the vouchers are and Lifeline scholarships, I think, pretty well. What I'll speak on from the House perspective, and being a freshman, it's been an interesting year. This might be my first year. I scored in 11 months ago, and it's been a ride. And if you haven't been following the politics, we have a very slim majority in the House, 1 seat. So when somebody leaves or resigns, we have what's called a special election, and that just puts the whole balance of power in turbulence. So it's always kind of crazy being in the building when there's a vacancy, because they're sort of just like, well, are we going to be in the majority or aren't we? The term, and me and the senator were talking before we started getting going here, is I keep hearing this all the time. We've never done this before, or this isn't how it usually goes. So with this budget, it's been a roller coaster ride, and I remember, there's all sorts of rumors and stuff, but I don't really get into rumors. I wait until our leadership has a conversation when we have caucus. So if you're not familiar with what caucus is, it's when we all come together in a room like this, essentially in the Capitol building, as the Democrats, and talk about what we're voting on, and people let their thoughts or concerns out on issues. When it came to this specific budget and the Lifeline scholarships, we have a very, very diverse caucus. We have anything from effectively progressives like AOC to conservatives like Joe Manchin. I'm throwing out national people just because I feel like people are probably familiar with those names. But we have super left people, and we have very moderate or even conservative members, and everywhere in between. So there's a lot of different takes on Lifeline scholarships and vouchers in our caucus. Most of us that represent cities, I feel, are pretty open-minded to just whatever's going to work and help our kids, because the situation just is what it is. And look, I'm willing to work with anybody, especially for our kids. And I'm not closed-minded. I always have an open-door policy. I'm willing to hear what people have to say or what solutions we can have. But that specifically, when we were in caucus, the leadership told us they had been trying to whip votes all day, and they just said, we don't have enough votes to vote for the budget as it is. Then they said they talked to the governor. The governor said, look, if it gets you the votes, I'll veto the Lifeline scholarships. And then we all went out and we voted. And that's just how it was from my perspective. I wasn't, frankly, brought into any kind of room with the governor or anything like that. It was sort of just, I kind of sat in my office and talked with my colleagues about other things, and there's other things in the budget that I'm working on. I was sort of focusing on those. Not that the education piece isn't important. I was keeping tabs on it, but I'm just not powerful enough to really, have a whole lot of sway there, essentially. So, yeah, that's sort of what happened from my perspective. It's just, we were just sort of told the votes weren't there, and that, we were going to continue to, we still haven't totally finished the budget, so we said, look, we're going to have ongoing conversations. That's sort of how that went for me.
Is there, if that would have passed in the House, is there anybody would have been negatively impacted by the passing of Lifeline Scholarship?
So it depends on who you talk to. Frankly, I think what public school advocates say, and I'm just giving you an objective opinion, is that private should be funded privately, public should be funded publicly, right? And I'm talking about the more like adamant people on the public sector side. That's just sort of how they feel. So if you have that take, then you're going to think, well, why should we give public money for private institutions? So they would argue that there's a harm there. For me, look, the status of the Harrisburg schools, we know what it is. We know that there's a lot of opportunities for alternative education. I think in the city footprint, we have 5 charters. And then we have Nativity School, the JCC, other private entities, Bishop McDevitt, and then there's DC Votech. So there's a lot of different avenues for people to go. But I wouldn't say that Lifeline scholarships would harm somebody. I think that's a little extreme, but,
I think it's more of a threat. Dave's absolutely right, that the people that are sending their children, that can afford to send their children to public school, are saying, why should my public tax dollars why am I not entitled to those dollars that I pay in school tax if the schools aren't educating my children? That's just the other side of your argument. That's politics. That's just where we're at. Obviously, this is a big union issue. The education unions were the biggest contributors to, Governor Shapiro's campaign. It's all public knowledge. I'm trying to keep politics out of it. But when things change, whoever is in charge are threatened. It's just like when the automobile came along, and what do you think the guy that was making buggy whips, thought about it? He didn't want cars. But, whether we like it or not, education is changing not only in America, but worldwide. And we're competing globally now. We're not just competing with California or Canada or Mexico, it's around the world. So we need to deliver education. I mean, before, when you think about, look, I went to public school. I went to Central Dauphin, and we got a basic education, well-rounded.
It's too bad.
Yeah, well, whatever.
I went to Central Dauphin East.
You did? Okay.
We're rivals.
Yeah, which is fine, but we're all sort of on the same team when it comes to education. But what I wanted to say is, the kids need to be educated, and you're starting to see silo education popping up, where if somebody wants to go into a trade, they get into that track early and learn a trade. And if they want to, become a scientist, that's where you hear the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and I had a vapor block there for a second. I apologize. But, and that's good and bad, because I think, education should be well-rounded, and everybody should have, a balanced education, and we're starting to see that go away. But the world's changing. I mean, some of us that are more age-challenged than some of you out there, I'm 63, the world's completely a different place. The country's a completely different place than what I grew up in, and you're not going to be able to stop that. The question is, how do we harness that where everybody can be included and rise up together with that?
Absolutely. Sorry about that. Here's another question. Should education be a nonpartisan issue or a nonpartisan topic? And if it should, why isn't it? Why is it? It seems like from you all's conversation, if the Senate is majority Republican and the House is majority Democrat, it sounds like the $660 million that could have been going to children in the lower 15th% of the state are missing out on $660 million because y'all got something going on that we don't know about. Right. Am I capturing that right?
Look,
so why is education a partisan issue, and should it be that way, or is there any advantage to it being this way? Or
I don't think education should be partisan at all, but unfortunately, I think just about everything in the country is partisan now. And with technology, the craziest people seem to have the loudest voice, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, and they're on the news, and, there's 10% on the left and 10% on the right that are dominating everything. And you can watch CNN and Fox, and they're just as bad. They're just saying different words and inciting people to believe that the country's falling apart. It shouldn't be partisan at all, but it has become partisan. And a lot of that has to do with the social things going on right now with, different living arrangements and, how people think about sexual orientation and that stuff. And unfortunately, it's very partisan, and it shouldn't be. And I just have to say this, when I was a kid, we were taught how to think, not what to think. But now, a lot of education is telling people what to think and not how to think. And you're seeing that in higher education. I'm talking about college especially, and in high school, and even at the grade school level. And I think, we need to get back to the basics and, teach basic, education, math, reading, writing, and everything. And, try to keep the country together.
What can we do as a voting population to get education? Because it sounds like, again, if $660 million were supposed to come to children that we parent and that we are the community for, and if this is y'all issue, and I'm talking about senator and state representative, what can we do to ensure that those type of resources make it to these precious children that need them?
So the best thing you can do is to continue to have meetings like this. I think too often, to the senator's point, we're trying to have some of these conversations, and we're letting pundits, influencers, and even politicians dictate the conversation. But frankly, we're not very good at bringing the country together right now. I think a lot of these conversations need to happen in our churches, our union halls, at our VFWs, even at the dinner table, where we have civil discourse around the issues that we're faced with. And then through that civil discourse, engage policymakers on what the consensus is and how we want to move forward as community. So I think the best thing you can do is to foster and be that change. So when somebody says something to you in your space that you don't like politically, I think we've got to figure out a better way of not pointing a finger and shouting people down when we disagree with them. Figure out different, I'm not saying you can't hold people accountable, but when we engage, do it in a way that's disarming so that we can actually have a civil dialogue, so that way we can start talking about these issues, because we have to. You're absolutely right. We've got to do better for our kids. But as a policymaker, what I want to know is what my constituents think. And so if you guys go back to your congregations respectively in your different areas that you're in, if you're here, you're probably a community leader, right? You're probably in and around a lot of people. You should, talk to them and say, hey, I attended an education forum last night and I took away these points. What do you think? And once we come to our respective spaces, engage us as policymakers on what you think the solutions are. I would love to hear that. And I'll come to your space, wherever it is, to talk about these things like we are now.
And I would add to that, I think those points are all great, but isn't it funny how Thanksgiving has become a holiday where you're not supposed to talk to your family? Because it's just crazy. And the people that are saying that are the people that we're talking about, with the influencers, the troublemakers, the people with the loud microphone. Thanksgiving at my house is pretty raucous event. And, everybody doesn't always get along, but we talk. We love each other. We're family. But everybody's saying, hey, don't talk that anymore with your family. Don't do this with the family. To me is the cornerstone. And we need to support the family. The other thing that I'm going to tag along with that, supporting the family, is that, the government, politics, they don't represent all the people. They only represent the people that show up. And you have to understand that. And what I mean by that is we have a real problem. How do we get to this discourse? Now, my team, the R team, is against mail-in ballots, right? With all this nonsense that went on with Wolf and drop boxes and all that. Well, I'm all for mail-in ballots because I think it gives an opportunity to every one of you here to help organize just the 4 or 5 people you know around you. You don't need to go out and be on the street and banging doors like we do. That's our choice. But if you can influence 4 or 5 people and educate them on this issue of education and tell them to get the mail-in ballot, they won't have to put up with the nonsense at the polls. They won't have to listen to all this stuff. So there's a real opportunity, I think, for both parties to try to engage more educated voters because, Governor Shapiro right now, when you go to sign up for your license, you have to opt out if you don't want to be registered to vote. Before, when you went there, they said, would you like to be registered to vote? And you would say either yes or no. Well, now he's changed that you're going to get automatically registered to vote unless you say no. Now, everybody kind of thinks that's good. And I want more people voting because less and less people vote every election, which means a smaller amount of people are controlling what's going on in this country. But at the same time, what good does it do to, register people to vote that don't want to vote, aren't going to vote, don't know what they're voting? So I really think, I agree with Dave, you're here because you're committed. You could be anywhere else on a Sunday evening. Get involved, work the mail-in ballots, and make this issue of education important to the 4 or 5 people you know. You're not going to influence 100 people. Maybe if you work hard and knock on doors, you could, but If everybody in this room could get 4 or 5 people, and they can get 4 or 5 people, these elections are close. I only won my election by 1.5% the first time and 2%. And I represent 256,000 people in my district, and about 140,000 of those votes. So 2% is a larger number, but Dave's number is much smaller. His races can be influenced by that kind of groundswell support. The mayor's race, look at that. How many votes did you get? Do you know off the top of your head? Yeah. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? 465.
Every representative represents 60,000 people, about. So,
And how many people out of those 60,000 are voting?
a couple thousand. Yeah. No, yeah.
And the majority of the people who vote in your election, is there a demographic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the senator sees it too. So when we go out, we don't just randomly knock on doors. We use data, and it's sort of driven by that. So we do what's called targeting. And so you want to talk to as many voters as possible. So you look, there's a database that you can have access to that you look through that says, okay, this person's likely to vote. And so those are the ones that you go out and talk to. I would love to talk to every voter, but there's just not enough time and resources to do that. So you have to be strategic in that way. And I would say it largely leans older. And frankly, for it being as a diverse district as it is, I think it leans a little bit more white. And
So older and white is typically who is voting in an election.
I would say that it's still a lot of black and brown folks of all ages, but I would say the one demographic that is participating a little bit more is older.
Yeah, I mean, your
white.
district is, I might say your district, any elected official's district's your district, and the way the country, some are going to be more white, some are going to be more black, some are going to be more blended. Some are going to be, hardcore R, some are going to be hardcore D, and some are going to be purple. And in fact, as a senator, I have to address all of these constituencies. And I like talking to people who don't like me, because it's much more fun, I find, but that's another topic. But I just, what I want to emphasize here really is that, you want to get in the game. We got to fix education, and we have the votes up here, Dave and I do, and we're going to make those votes how we see fit. And if you want to see what you need to get done, you need to vote people into office that are supporting what you think needs to be done. And I can help you with that somewhat, but politicians listen to people. They're scared to death of people. And if you start getting some motion and getting people coming and knocking on doors and sending letters, they'll pay attention. I'm sorry. Go. What's your next question?
Oh,
Yeah.
I love what you just said. How many pastors do we have in the room? Clergy? Would you stand up, clergy? One more time. Stand up, all the clergy people. So let me see. How many of you all are senior pastors of a church? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's say the average congregation, you all may sit down. Let's say the average congregation is 100 people. That's a pretty significant amount of people as it relates to your race, I would imagine, as far as votes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, let me give you an example. I mean, most people here are from Dauphin County, right? The commissioner race was lost by 42 votes in all of Dauphin County. Yep. And for the first time in 90 years, Dauphin County is going to have a Democratic majority. Now, I'm not happy about that, but I work with everybody. I'm meeting with the new commissioner, whatever. But my point is, it's 42 votes countywide. You can and do make a difference. You have to engage.
For the race for mayor of Harrisburg in the primary, Mayor Williams beat Mayor Pappenfuse by I think 37 votes.
Yeah, I mean those numbers are switchable.
When you lose by that much, that keeps you up at night because that's 37 cups of coffee that could have made the difference, and you didn't do it. So, no, these races do get very tight, and every vote does count.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's my next question. Which states do you see doing a great job with public education and or offering choice? Which states do you see doing a good job with public education, or which states do you see doing a good job handling school choice options?
Well, I'll say this: there's 15 states that have enacted school choice now in a big way.
And can you tell us a little bit about what school choice is?
Um,
Just assuming they don't.
Assume what we're talking about here, that the state is saying we will give any citizen money for their child's education, and if they choose to go to a private school, that's fine. If they choose to go to a public school, that's fine. It's primarily they're going to private schools. And when we say private schools, it's not all religious. You know, there's cyber, there's charter, and there's other just, private schools out there that are non-denominational that just feel we aren't educating the kids the way they need to be. So those 15 states, it's too early to tell how they're doing because it's only been the last 3 years. Arizona is probably the oldest one, and their numbers are, starting, because you can't look at last year and this year and say that's a trend. You need 5-10 years to really see if things are working. But you look at Mississippi, right? They have really turned around, their educational program, privatized a lot of it, and test scores are going up. And their whole mantra down there is, it's not about money. You don't need $21,000 to educate a kid. That's what Harrisburg's spending. You go to Bishop McDevitt, it's $9,000 that they're paying. And they're getting probably a better education, honestly. So it's about removing the roadblocks to education, supporting the kids, and teaching them.
Oh, let me ask a question about that. Hold on, let me make sure I heard this correctly.
Right.
So you have in the Harrisburg School District, it costs $21,000 to educate one student per year.
That's what they're spending, yes.
Versus Bishop McDevitt that costs $9,000.
Tuition's about
tuition.
$9,600 you have to pay to go there. Now they have a donor base that helps there, and there's support there, but that's what those parents are paying.
And so school choice says that a parent that can afford $9,600 a year to send their child there, they can go there. But a school choice would say that a parent who can't afford that would still be able to go there.
That's the absolute key. That's what's driving this.
So if I live on Zarker Street, right behind the church,
right,
and my child suffers with, let's say, dyslexia, autism, or my child just doesn't do well in whatever school that's in the Harrisburg School District.
right.
If I said, you know what, McDevitt has a program over there that I like and that I want my child to get into, what hinders them from being able to go there?
You absolutely can. If you're in those 15%, bottom 15% of the schools in Pennsylvania, we've been talking about other states. I'm back to Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
You would get that money, and as long as you are less than 250% of the federal poverty levels, which means you could make up to $75,000 a year. So if you make $75,000 or less, you would get this money directly to yourself, and you could send your kid to whatever school you wanted to. You get $5,000 for elementary, $10,000 for high school, and $15,000 for special needs.
But that's currently not the case in Pennsylvania.
No, it's not. That's what we're talking about. The past has not failed. That's what I'm working on. That's why I'm angry. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to get it done.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
The model that I think Pennsylvania has a very antiquated municipal system. A lot of other states don't have all these different townships and boroughs. Maryland has what's like a county-wide model. And so if we could do the reforms now, I think that would require constitutional amendments and things. And I think the senator knows us agreeing on the color of the sky is hard right now. So sitting down and doing something like trying to figure out a constitutional amendment is going to be pretty tough. But if I had my druthers about it, I would switch us to a county-wide model. I think that would do a lot in addressing some of the pension issues, because then it would have one collective pot that we could work on funding. It also could do a lot to address property taxes. And also it would just give countywide schools, so you would have a larger tax base, so that could help a Harrisburg and a Steelton with a limited tax base if we just had a countywide structure. So that's something, one of my reasons for wanting to run for this is I got so frustrated being on Harrisburg City Council because of the municipal code system. It just made it so hard to fix a lot of problems because the Constitution just doesn't allow you to do a lot of things, particularly from a revenue standpoint, because property taxes are a hurt on people. You know, inflation is hurting people, and I know that they'd like us to lower them. I'd like to lower them as well, but when you look at the toolkit that municipalities have, it's very restrictive. So I think if I could mimic a government system that I like, it's like Maryland, in particular on schools and countywide schools.
Yeah, Dave's right. That's a huge thing that I didn't mention as well. But I mean, we are a commonwealth. We're the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We're not a state. And we have...
Where the wealth is not common.
Pardon me? What? I'm sorry?
Where the wealth is not common.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother meeting. You know, we have, 57 counties. We have 575 different school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. And we have 2,700 different municipalities when you think about that. You know, the city of Harrisburg, the Water Authority of Harrisburg, all that. So it's so hard to manage. But just think about that for a second. 575 school districts. There's 575 superintendents. There's 575 levels of whatever bureaucracy. None of that's educating kids. If we could somehow get to the county-wide level where you had one guy running the county, you know, or woman, or whatever. I'm not trying to start a fight.
Gotta be careful these days.
I know, you have to be careful. Just somebody's in charge, and then you'd still have a school principal and so on, and just common accounting systems, common payroll systems, and just educate the kids instead of, you know, feeding this massive bureaucracy that doesn't do anything to really help the end product, which in this case is children.
What you're saying is I think I resonate with that so much. You have superintendents, school administrators who are in the business of transportation, in the business of accounting, in the business of security, in the, you know, and struggling with the business of education. Right? Yeah. All of those businesses are the responsibility of our superintendents and, you know, school administrators.
You know, you think about this right now. I don't want to go too far off, but, you know, the Senate, Senator Mike Regan across the river is really trying to push a school safety bill that would require armed guards in all of our schools, you know. And, you know, it's just so hard for me as somebody that we're even at this point, you know, with shootings and kids don't feel safe in school. I mean, I never experienced that when I was in school. Yeah, there were fights and things like that, but we never felt threatened. But, you know, the biggest opponent of the school safety bill are the school districts because they don't want to spend the money. And I'm going, like, how can we not do that to keep our kids safe? I mean, that's something I feel compelled in my heart. As much as I don't like state mandates, it's something we have to do because, you know, after something terrible happens, it's thoughts and prayers, you know, should have done, could have done this, you know, it's just, so there's a lot there with education, a lot of moving parts.
Absolutely. So what do you all see as the path forward here in Harrisburg, in Pennsylvania, for kids who are not performing at grade level? And let me add this layer of consideration. Before the pandemic, kids were not performing at grade level. Because of the pandemic, that has grown worse. Right? How many folks do we have from the Rock City Learning Center? Just one. Could you stand up? Thank you. Thank you. Three people. Would you all agree, from working with children every day, that them not being at grade level can you see that as significant? Right? Not having the fundamental blocks to get them where they need to be. Like they can finish an assignment, they can take a test and do well, but you know behind that, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that true? That you can tell that they're missing some of the fundamental learning blocks that they need? Okay. Please don't let me shake my head into you shaking your head. If that's not the truth, say no. But I think it is true. I think we are dealing with youth in our community now who are behind grade level, and how that usually plays out in communities such as the one we are in right now is if education is not what they're thriving at and succeeding at, there is a direct pipeline to them being in the criminal justice system.
Oh, yeah, I think education has to be in person. I think remote education is just not good on so many levels. You don't get socialization skills. You don't, figure out how to solve problems and so on. Now, and I'm not saying there isn't a role for, somebody that's doing, specialized study in, a remote education, but, it's even, look, I don't know a lot about everything, but I know when there's snow days now or weather days, none of these kids are studying like they're supposed to. They're all running around the neighborhood or, doing this or that or whatever. It's just, it's a different world out there.
Well, and I understand that, like remote education, but if it's your child getting beat up every day, or if it's your child who is a brilliant child, but they're struggling at school, and you see no other hope, like, what does a parent do? What does a parent do with their child who is struggling in these systems? Like, what pathway do you all see forward to helping empower parents to help their children to be educated, so we're not feeding a criminal justice system with our children?
Right. I mean, to me, when I hear the stories about bullying and everything, and I've talked to a lot of parents about this coming in, I've met with a lot of fully remote kids and cyber kids, and to me, not addressing the underlying problem isn't the answer as adults. That's not why I got elected as a senator. I think that, we need to get control of our schools again on a whole lot of levels. And I believe, as I said earlier, is to get the state out of our educational live as much as possible, and put people that are committed in to the schools, on the school boards, running the schools, and give them the power to do what needs to be done. I mean, there are probably some kids that shouldn't be in school, and to have them ruin a whole learning environment for everybody isn't the answer.
So where do those kids go?
Well, back in my day, they went to reform school. I don't know, maybe some of the older people, but you can't ruin everybody or bring everybody's experience down to the lowest common denominator and expect people to excel. And, obviously we'd have to make a path for troubled youth. I mean, I had a good friend in high school. He was in a lot of trouble, and the judge sentenced him. He goes, "You're going to prison or the Marine Corps? What do you want?" And he's going like, "I'm going to the Marine Corps," because he didn't want to go to prison. We need some more of that kind of stuff, I think, in the country that we used to do. But, I guarantee you, I've been out of high school. I graduated in 78, however many years ago, like that. If a judge sat up there today on the bench and said, you're going to prison or you're joining the military, do you think that would fly? But that's what some people need.
But that was a pathway for that kid who was troubled.
Yeah, and I lost touch with my friend, but, he ended up getting out and married and, kids and stuff. I mean, I don't really know what he's doing, but for him, that's what he needed,
What was the question? I was listening to his answer. The question again.
Yeah. What do you see as the path forward here in Harrisburg, in Pennsylvania, for kids not performing at grade level?
Yeah, so actually this is an interesting one for me, and when I was thinking about it, the senator was speaking. So I used to be the labor representative for the Capital Region United Way, and when I was there, we were looking into certified apprenticeship programs and what we could do to get people in those, because we desperately need more tradespeople. And these are good paying jobs with decent benefits and really good wages. But when I talked to the trainers, they were saying that the biggest barrier for folks is the aptitude test. If you want to get into an apprenticeship program, you have to take an aptitude test that assesses whether you're at a 8th or 9th grade reading and math level. Overwhelming applicants were failing the test. and not just in Harrisburg, regionally. So that's like one of those things when you have a problem, you open the door and then you see like 5 others. We are clearly rubber stamping our kids through the systems. And I know you have a compelling story where you talk about that in your experience. And I'm really afraid, and this is before COVID, that we're at risk of a lost generation. And we've got to get these kids caught up. So what I've called for, and what I like to know, I'm by no means an education expert, but we need a 10-year education plan. And we've got to get all of the players across the space that want to, in this space, to the table and figure out what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and where we can allocate resources and who's the best fit to fix whatever it is. We really need, so we've talked a lot about.
Sorry, who's we? You said we need. Who's we?
So, wait, would we need like a 10-year plan?
Yeah. Who's the we need a 10-year plan? Like,
Oh, stakeholders,
Okay.
People in the education space, anybody that's interested in wanting to help our youth. I would say coaches, teachers. I don't mind it being charter people or people that are for school choice, people that are for public schools, the unions, everybody that's a participant in this space coming to the table to have a discussion on how we get our kids caught up. Because, and there's some other things that are happening. We're talking, like at the federal level, we're talking a lot about green infrastructure. And there's a lot of money out there for solar panels and building broadband out in rural areas. We do not have the trained workforce to fill those jobs as it stands right now. So because of that, it may put a lot of these infrastructure projects at risk. They may not get done because we don't have the capacity of the workforce. So we've got to do vocational training. We've got to get our kids, where a majority of these kids are at a reading math level that's sufficient. So, I mean, that's what I've called on, and I'm a member of the Black Caucus. I want the Black Caucus to lead this discussion. If this is truly, when I hear floor speeches, it's always about kids in the inner cities that are struggling, Black and brown children that are struggling in the inner cities. If this is really about them, let the Black Caucus lead the discussion. And there's a lot of diverse opinions. Again, we have progressives, we have more moderate members, and that's sort of what I've been calling for. Let's all get to the table and figure out a 10-year education plan, and let's fund it and let's stick to it so that we can get our kids caught up and even in a better position than they were prior to the pandemic.
I love it. What can Black Pastors United for Education, and us as Black pastors, we represent clergy, period, not just Black, but us and our congregations, the people who are represented here, what can we do as it relates to what you just said, coming up with a 10-year plan? How can we utilize our congregations as informed voters, whatever that may mean, to, I guess, begin a process of figuring this out in Pennsylvania?
So I would say, I would happily set up a meeting where we sit down with Rep. Napoleon Nelson. He is the chair of the Black Caucus. Love to facilitate a meeting. Representative Hill Evans, she's the chair of the Central PA Caucus for the Democrats. We could have a meeting there and just start that with facilitating it. But then I think, some sort of call to action where we say, look, we need a 10-year plan for our kids. And we're asking lawmakers or policymakers to come to the table and figure out a 10-year plan for how we get our kids caught up.
Yeah, I would say, to me, this is not a black-white problem, black, white, brown, whatever terminology. I mean, the other suburban districts are struggling with the exact same things as far as test scores and so on go. They may have more money, but they're getting about the same type of results at the end of the day, honestly. And I think that, as pastors, the last thing you should be doing is setting up a committee, because whenever government wants to do anything, doesn't want to do anything, they say, well, let's have a committee, right? And then, let's come out with the report. What I would encourage you to do is say, if there's 4 or 5 people in the congregation that want to get together and have a meeting with them and say, this is what I want you to do. Just reach out to 4 or 5 people and educate them on this education issue and get them to vote. And if it's 5 people, and let's say 5, that's 25. That's halfway to the 42 votes that the county commissioner lost by. Multiple parishes are doing that. And, I'm